That Mrs. Macron's not as nice as she looks, is she? Look at the way she manhandled the president of the French Republic in full view of all the cameras, though they hoped and believed in the beginning that only RT had captured the contretemps, or horseplay as he now describes it, only to discover that Reuters and the Press Association had the pictures too. Nobody's asking about the shoulder blade of the stewardess seen coming out of the plane after them. It looks to me as if there might have been the mother of all contretemps going on inside that plane. It looks to me like her uniform has been torn at the shoulder, and that she may even be bleeding from the shoulder. Do take a closer look at that. Now, if so, that would place grave doubt on Macron's interview in which he gave today, in which he said that he had only been innocently removing a tissue paper from the table of the famous train on the journey back from Kiev to France. It may or may not be true in that case. Equally, this might be the kind of thing that couples do. As a married man myself, I would find it less than horseplay, or more than horseplay, if my wife whacked me in the kisser right before I was to go down the steps to a red carpet waiting for a guard of honor to inspect me. And when you look at the footage in slow-mo, it's hard to square it with the description horseplay. It's a two-hander. Now, I know that Glasgow kissing and French kissing are different things, but it looked much more like Glasgow kissing than French kissing to me. Now, it may have been she was just, I don't know, wiping his nose so that the cameras didn't catch anything unfortunate. It may just have been that she was going to brush the dust off his shoulder and missed, but it looked like a proper whack. Now, these kind of things can happen. They don't happen in my marriage, thank God. And there are men who do get beaten up. In fact, there's a whole new vogue in France where men are being told that if you are the victim of domestic violence, come and do some, I don't know, taekwondo or self-protection classes. It's become the trend in France after the scenes in Hanoi. But the truth is that Macron and his missus cut less than a dash nowadays. The beginning of the Macron era looked like it was going to be Kennedy-esque, if a trifle short, and if the Jackie Kennedy, well, not quite as attractive as Mrs. Onassis. But the end of the Macron era is shaping up like a very tawdry one indeed. So much so that he is taking a back seat on international matters, as indeed is Keir Starmer, who suddenly realizes the very, very grave political danger he and his premiership are now in. Thus, all attention has moved to Berlin, where there were very dramatic developments yesterday and today. Yesterday, Merz, whose father was a Nazi officer, one of Hitler's inner circle, said that he would allow the German missile Taurus, kind of cruise missile with bells and whistles, to be fired as deeply into Russia as the Ukraine wanted to fire it. The problem with that formulation is that the Ukraine are not capable of flying it. Only German armaments engineers can fly and deploy the Taurus missile. In other words, what Merz was saying was that Germany itself was going to attack Russia deep into its interior, not just to Leningrad, St. Petersburg and Moscow, but all parts west of the Urals of the Russian Federation. An attack by Germany on Russia. What could possibly go wrong? Well, we've been getting a hint of it over the last 24 hours. First of all, a member of the Duma from the Defense Committee of the Duma said that if any Taurus missile hits any Russian target inside Russia, then Berlin will immediately be struck in retaliation. Some people saw that as parliamentary hot-headedness. But this afternoon, Margarita Simonyan, the head of RT, the Russian broadcasting foreign arm, international arm, in writing made very plain indeed that if Russia is struck by German missiles, that Germany will be struck in return. Some may say that the Russians are bluffing, but those would be people who knew nothing about Russian history, knew nothing about the Russian character, knew nothing about the state of Russian public opinion, and knew nothing about the character of the Russian state and its leaders. When Margarita Simonyan says something, she is reflecting the views at the very, very top of the Kremlin. And it's hard to argue with them. If the Ukrainians can't fly the Taurus into Moscow, then plainly the Germans must have flown Taurus missiles into Moscow. And the last time German missiles fell on Moscow in the terrible events from Operation Barbarossa in June of 1941, right up until the flag of the Soviet Union was planted above the Reichstag in late April of 1945, the Russians know the Germans very, very well, only too well. Merz has dug in. He insists that that is now the position of Germany, and you may say he's biting off rather more than he may be able to chew, because I remind you that just like Keir Starmer, Merz is the Prime Minister, but only a small percentage of the German people voted for him. And just like Keir Starmer, he has a national populist party breathing down his neck even more hotly than Keir Starmer does, because the AfD in Germany are only a whisker behind Herr Merz in being able to take the chancellorship of the Bundesrepublik. Now, Merz, with 25% of the German people's votes, has therefore taken Germany, and by extension Europe and NATO, though I'm going to deep dive a bit into that in just a moment. He's certainly taken Germany to the verge of their third war in just over 100 years with their Russian neighbor. It did not end well the first time. It ended in utter cataclysm and catastrophe the second time. And as Russia has approximately 4,250 nuclear weapons and Germany has none, it wouldn't appear on the face of it that this time will be any better than how it finished last time. Merz is obviously counting on Article 5 of the NATO Treaty, into which I must now dive, for the education of the German public at least, but also a very large number of people who seem to imagine that a Russian retaliation on Germany would automatically trigger an Article 5 resolution of all of the NATO powers to come to Germany's rescue. But neither of those two things is true. There is nothing automatic about Article 5. All of the countries of NATO, all of them, have to agree to trigger Article 5. And I don't believe that Hungary would be the only NATO power to veto any such decision. And secondly, even if triggered, Each member of NATO is free to decide how, to what extent, in which way they would respond to Germany's defense. And I have a very strong feeling that not only would Turkey, not only would Hungary, but also Slovakia, and maybe others, maybe even including France. No love lost, of course, historically between France and Germany, would refuse to trigger Article 5. But if it was triggered, then a very significant number of NATO countries, crucially the United States of America, would decline to enter World War III with all of its existential necessity. The end of the world, the end of America, the end of Britain, France, the end of all of the NATO powers, the end of humanity in the world. That's a big price to pay for a little German with a moustache having the nerve to fire cruise missiles by proxy right into the heart of Russia. So my advice to the German people, the German parliament, and to the majority party in the German parliament is to walk this one back just as quickly as possible. My contacts in Moscow, which are not, after all, inconsiderable, are telling me that this is a very strong feeling inside Russia, that they've had enough, that all this messing around is only leading to more war and more blood. That all this, some call it pussyfooting, inching forward a kilometre, a square kilometre at a time, is merely prolonging the inevitable and risking all-out international conflagration. There are many in Moscow, as they now, right now, this hour, face another blizzard of attacks by drones from the Ukrainian armed forces over Moscow right now. There are tens of drones attacking the capital of Russia. If those drones are replaced by Taurus, they may still be shot down, but they are not the only thing that's going to be shot down this evening. What's being shot down is any belief that with the current regime in Kiev, any peace agreement is possible. Virtually nobody in Moscow believes that any peace agreement with little Volodymyr Zelensky is possible or desirable, because it is widely, overwhelmingly felt that any deal with Zelensky will scarcely be worth the paper that it is written on. That Zelensky's only hope of remaining in office, in power, in Kiev, is to keep the atmosphere of war, the fear of war, going forever, for as long as he wants and needs it to. And so the feeling in Moscow now is that Zelensky and his clique must go, that there must be an entirely new government in Kiev, with an entirely new attitude, both towards their east and towards their west. And so the goals of the special military operation, as the Russians call it, war aims, as I call it, are steadily escalating. The buffer zone that Russia has declared it intends to have around the entirety of the east and the north and south of Ukraine can only be more and more ambitious in their scope. Already, Russia is planning to take Kharkov. It's planning to take Odessa. It's planning to blockade the sea from Zelensky, from the regime in Kiev. It's planning to advance all the way to the Dnipro. It's planning effectively to cut Ukraine in half. And then the Hungarians, the Romanians, and the Poles may very well start to claim their land and their people that would thereafter be trapped in a rump ultra-nationalist regime in Kiev. In other words, Ukraine, as we have known it, historically speaking, briefly, may not soon exist. And if the Germans want to have a go, if they think they're hard enough, I caution them against it. I advise them to watch some of the excellent documentaries on Netflix. Other platforms are available to see what happened when Germany last invaded Russia, to see what happened the last time panzers were on the Ukrainian steppe, to see what happened at Stalingrad, at Kursk, at the gates of Moscow, at the gates of Leningrad. I advise them to watch these documentaries and to watch them all the way to the end. Now, just before I came on air, Donald Trump said in a press conference that he had warned Netanyahu, he used the word warned Netanyahu, not to strike Iran. Presumably because he's hopeful still that the now fifth round of negotiations on the nuclear question between the United States and Iran are likely to bear fruit, and that the problem can be resolved without war. Now, I said at length on Wednesday, I won't repeat it, but watch it if you haven't seen it, what the consequences would be of a unilateral, independent attack by Netanyahu on the Islamic Republic of Iran. They bear listening to because they are extremely important. If the United States is not going to attack Iran, what chance is there that the United States will intervene to save Israel from an attack on Iran, against which President Trump has warned? He also said that we are getting food to the people of Gaza. Well, up to a point, Lord Copper. The dried food, which is being delivered in tiny quantities compared to the food needs of more than 2.25 million people. Dried food is no use if you don't have water. Dried food is no use if you don't have power to cook. Dried food for 60,000 people, leaving 2.2 million people starving, dying of famine and malnutrition, doesn't count as getting food to the people of Gaza. Today, for the umpteenth time, Hamas announced that it had agreed the terms of a permanent ceasefire with Witkoff, Donald Trump's special envoy for the Middle East, and they awaited Israel's response. So the thing is, President Trump, if your envoy has agreed a permanent ceasefire deal with the Palestinian resistance, why are you allowing Netanyahu to thumb his nose at you? Why are you allowing Israel to push America around? Wasn't making America great again your winning slogan? We'll be talking to our guests and to you on the telephone lines about all of these matters over the course of the next 1 hour and 40 minutes. Stay tuned. It's the mother of all talk shows.